Hello, everyone. How are you today? I am going to welcome you to the show and talk about my books today. I would love you to take your time, go to the bookstore, or send me an email at fourthwardpublications@gmail.com. Order my book and have a good afternoon, evening, and however many days it takes you to finish these wonderful books. We have I have 6 books that are published, and I'm going to talk about the 3 of them today, and then I'm gonna, then maybe next month I'll do another 3. That I think it wouldn't be so overwhelming that way. But I want you to take your time, and I want you to make sure you go pick these up because even though I am very proud of my work, I want you to know that I think they're excellent. And I think you're going to enjoy them because the storylines are excellent. You learn a lot about your history, and the books are really great. They are really great. So uh, take take a moment and look these up because you will never ever forget them. You'll love the characters, and the storyline, like I said, it's a wonderful. So we're going to talk about my last. We're going to start at the end and go back to the front. Okay, so we're going to talk about my last publications, which are the 2 that we talked about earlier in the series. Enslaved. We're going to talk about that one first. And then we'll go to the others. Now, just broadly explaining what each one is. We talked about Enslaved being a book about a African princess who was stolen from Africa, and we follow her life from her adolescent years, and we tell you about her rearing, her parentage, uh, what her mother and her aunt tried to teach her in guiding her to be a queen because she was the daughter of the king of their village. And they taught her all the skills that she would need and all the things that she would need to be a good queen, a good leader. And that is where we find her in her adolescence, just not really after her adolescence. We start uh, I guess around 12 years old, and we go up to age 16. And by that time, she's ready to marry and find her chosen husband because she has a prearranged marriage. And this is something that uh, she was well accustomed to, and she accepted it, although she had wished it to be otherwise because she had a good friend of hers that she did want to marry. So the story starts with this little dilemma between herself and her best friend. She was didn't consider herself in love with anybody because she really had not had that experience. But these 2 people, we find them sitting on the on the banks of the river talking about their future, what they hope for their future. And we are taken from that scene into her marriage where she meets her prince. Oh, my phone is ringing. I forgot to turn it off. Let me do that now. We we where she meets her prince, and she instantly falls in love with this guy. So this is something that she really did not expect to have happen to her, but it's one of those things that happens spontaneously, and of course she embraces it because that's who she is. She is a very truthful, honest person, and that is where we are. But this story is going to teach you a lot about the people, our ancestors who were enslaved, how they were captured, when they were captured, the different situations that they were in, and it'll also give you a good idea of what happened to them once they were chain bound and left their village and to travel through the jungle into uh, an area they knew nothing about. And then they experienced new things that they had never uh, even envisioned. You have to remember these are teenagers, really. And the whole goal of the enslavers were to get the healthiest men and the prettiest women they could find to breed and to make into enslaved workers. So this is the dilemma that they face, and we follow them from the moment they are captured to when they are put on the ship. Well, the other thing, we find them going to the slave alcoves on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, and their shock about seeing the ocean because they had never seen that much water before and had never seen ships before, much less the white man who captured them. So this is a wonderful story that's twined in history, our history, and what happened to our people and the circumstances they met, the torture they endured, and also we get a great look at what happened to them on that ship. Okay. Princess Gemma's life was very different from those that were with her on that ship, but yet she was still enslaved. Okay. So I want you to take a look at this book and get it because it's wonderful. And even though I'm an author, I think for many of us, and the main reason I wrote this book was to get my own point of reference and my own idea and confirmation as to what happened to our people. What did they go through? And that was my research that I did that I would treasure forever because it's just an amazing thing that our people were so strong and so mighty. I'm here because they survived. And we must remember that. They survived. We're standing on their legacy, on their broad shoulders, because they had and the idea of us being born and being the survivors of their tragic journey and their tragic experiences when they were working on these horrible plantations and from sunup to sundown. So think about that. And we go from the slave ship into her enslavement in America and to her final destination, uh, the plantation that she was expected to live on. And then hmm, something wonderful happens, and we have part two. Part two is the book that finishes off the story. And we go from her enslavement to her search for freedom. And I want you to take a great look at this because this continues our historical journey, where what happened to the people who escaped from slavery. And I want you to really take a look at it. It's a great, great experience. It's a great reading experience, and it's also a great historical journey because you're doing in your reading of this book, you're going through the same experiences that our ancestors had. And as I said before, my research that I valued most is that is the reading of those memoirs by ex people who have been enslaved and how they lived, what they were expected to do, what happened to their family members. Some of them were hung, some of them were burned to death. I mean, babies were taken away from mothers. I mean, I can't even envision going through anything that tragic, but our ancestors did, and that's why we must continue the fight for equality and justice in this country because one of the things that is most prevalent today is the racism that continues to grow and fester. Okay, so take a look at these two books; they're really great, and I want you to really absorb what happened to these people. She escaped, and she's on to her this the second and the conclusion of her story. And we are grateful to have these two books to share with you. I think you're going to love them because they're us. They're us, and they're about us. And of course, all of my stories are romantic and talks about a lot of different things. Now, you must remember there, I spent many of my years teaching adolescents about sexuality and identifying themselves as women because I basically not raised, but I worked with uh, young women between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. Some were adjudicated delinquent, some were not. And I had that experience. And one of the things that I enjoyed most was the interactions and the group discussions, the therapy sessions we had, and the workshops we did on sexual education and preparing them for what they needed to know. So I combined all that knowledge with my background of working with people because this is something I always did, and something that I learned from my mother because we started working in youth groups when I was like 10, 12 years old. Um, my mother was just a very active person, and she did everything. I can't even imagine. She did flower arrangements. She taught. She had her own group of people. She created a senior ministry at our church that is going on today. And my youngest sister, Odessa, who we lost we didn't lose her, she died last year. Uh, she carried that group on for many years after my mother's death. And that group is still going on. I have two of my older sisters who are still participating in that same group. That's how creative and how wonderful the concepts my mother would put together. All these things she did to make a better community for us. And she taught us that. And the value of voting. We did that uh, every year. We went out canvassing different houses and apartment on our block and neighboring blocks. We did that, and we started doing that without even knowing what voting was. We had no concept of what it was, but we were very young, my Odessa and I, and we did that. And that's why I think our civil rights, our justice, and our equal opportunities in this country is so important. I'm not a big advocate of integration because it was integration that put us behind and took away all the progress we had made. We started doing things um, that disable us in many ways. We thought integrating and buying on a mass market like most other people were doing, the white people were doing. Let's just be plain about it. Going to their shows, going to their restaurants, going to their stores, and neglecting our own. I think that's the biggest mistake we ever made because that's when we start losing generational wealth. And we have to do something about that. So I encourage you to buy black, support your black businesses, and create your own businesses. Use your own intelligence because you have to remember that the whole body of knowledge that's in the world being used against us came from us and came from our ancestors. So think about those things as you move forward and help your children to move forward and to succeed in life. Okay, the other book that I want to discuss today, and I won't keep you that long, was I'll have a picture of it here, was Buttermilk Bottom. This is another book that I absolutely love. I think it's just one of the funniest and most joyful celebration of life in the black community, despite all the problems that we were having. This book shows that, and I just want you guys to take a look at it and enjoy the fun because even though we lived in just depressed areas and of the city, because right after slavery, this particular neighborhood, which was called Buttermilk Bottom, was one of the first areas that blacks were able to move into in Atlanta, Georgia, and they remained there for many, many generations because it was a comfortable place for them, and it was a protective environment because people from the outside didn't come in unless they knew someone. So this was like even people, even blacks, were not allowed down there if they didn't know anyone. It was a very protective area, and the people who lived there were um, very community conscious. They helped each other. They did everything to support each other's families whenever they can. But there were also a lot of nonsense. There was a lot of shooting, killings, um, beatings, fighting, all of that. But one of the things that I remember as a child, and I think it was my brother who reminded me, he was saying that the kids from Buttermilk Bottom knew more of your mama jokes than anyone else in the world. And, that was always a big game when we were growing up. Who could embarrass the next person the most and the quickest telling your mama jokes? I can tell you, it's unbelievable. If you don't know any of your mama jokes, if you need, it's a verbal battle, and it teaches you a lot of skills on how to fight back verbally. Okay, but this book enhances that, and it also goes through some of the childhood games and things that children did in this area, because there was always tons of children in these on these muddy roads, as you can see as depicted on the cover of the book. And it's a fun thing. It's a very fun book because the people who lived there were unlike anyone else, I should say. They were very community oriented and fun, but they were also very determined to be independent of the outside world, and they did not like others coming in. Police didn't come there unless it was like droves at one time. They didn't come on an individual level, and and I think many times there was recorded where whites would come in on a Saturday night and try to find someone to abuse or whatever. But those things came and went, and this community fought against that. And they did so in a very discreet manner. They dealt with people in a very discreet manner. And that's one of the things I think we need to learn how to do, is to do the research and find out what happened to the Black community. How did they fend for themselves in a very depressed situation? Because this is the Jim Crow years, and all the oppression that they experienced was a part of their lifestyle. They had tremendous coping skills. They had a tremendous spirit, which was displayed in the music, the blues that they sang, the entertainment, the dancing, they used to have what you call heaven and hell parties, which was something that I thought was absolutely fascinating. I heard about these when I was growing up, but when I did the research, I could really get into them because I hadn't, we were not allowed to do that. But I did know people in our community who participated in Heaven and Hell Party. It was like the apartments in the book and on the book, on the cover of the book that I just showed you. Let me show it to you again so you can take a look at it, because I think this is one of the wonderful things. They had two stories here on in most of the buildings, and they were wooden frame. But whenever they had a heaven and hell party, they would have the heavenly party on the top of in the top apartment. In the bottom apartment, they would have gambling, the blues, whatever. And sometimes it was a little competition as to who sang the loudest, who had the most fun. But the whole idea of these parties was to raise money for the community or for the church. But those are the kind of things that we were doing. And this is like we're talking about. It's Well, let's see, it's forever. I don't know, from slavery time up until the '60s when this community was torn down, and they did that purposely and decided that this neighborhood had to go because it's set right down in almost like in the business district of Atlanta, and you could from the high skyscrapers that were very close by. They could look down on Buttermilk Pond and it looked like a little black hole, which it was. Like I said, the muddy, muddy roads and all of the debris because because they call it the bottom because it sat below the regular street level. So if you were passing by Buttermilk Bottom on the street, the roofs of the houses would probably be at your waistline or even below that. And it was just a huge, gigantic ditch. And you could look down on all the houses down there, from the street up above. So, and there were lots of alleyways, not just streets. Some of the things it called, I think I remember one, I'm not sure this one was in Buttermilk Bottom, but I remember the name of the street was called St. George's Alley, but I don't think that was in Buttermilk Bottom per se. But I have to ask one of my sisters, they would know. Anyway, but the interesting part of this story is the spirit of the people, the strength of these survivors, because they made it possible for us to be where we are today. And we must always remember that. But Buttermilk Bonnet is a great book. And now I'll tell you the main character in here. It was a teacher who was fired because of some incident that he had on the street between two white people. He interceded in their conflict, and he ended up being uh, sent to jail because of that. So, and this book talks about his life after he gets out of jail and the people who supported him, people who loved him, cared for him, and people who admired him, and the children of the neighborhood who loved him, and how he became the central focus for many reasons. One, because he was a great leader, he was a very intelligent man, and he found a way to make a living in this terrible place that most people would not even go into. I know as a child, my mother would not allow us to go in that place. We would catch it if we were found there, and we often were because most of the kids in that area went to our school. We knew them. So going there was like you just had to sneak and do it, but you did it anyway, even though if you got caught and had to go to bed early, get your butt whipped. Those were the consequences of doing that. But we were not allowed, and definitely not allowed to go there on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. Now, the norm was it was like a normal week, say from Sunday morning to like Thursday. But after Friday, like Friday, my mother used to hear them talk about. They heard hear the first gunshot in Buttermilk Bottom around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it would continue until early Sunday morning. And that was the pattern there. But that was just something that happened. Oh, they're iron guns in Buttermilk Bottom. Like, oh wow. So that was something that we I didn't actually experience, but these were the stories that would come out after that would happen. So this book, I think I wrote it mainly because when I talk about my growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, and how strong the black men were, people tell me, no, they weren't. They couldn't have been. There's no way in the world they were allowed to be strong. They could not stand up against a white man and blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you something. Our black men knew how to cope with all situations, and they did that. They were the strength, they were the backbone, they were our warriors, and they took care of us. They took care of families. Now, unlike the lies that are being told about black men in the South and, well, not even the South, in Philadelphia today, black men take care of their children, they take care of their families. And the isolated people that they highlight in the media is just ridiculous. And we have to learn to rewrite all that history and talk about on mass media as I am doing today. Talk about how wonderful our black men are. We talk about how wonderful our families are. We have to stop being negative and understand the dynamics of a people who live in an oppressed situation. We are buying their information about who we are. We can't do that. We have to make our own stories. We have to tell our own truths. We have to admire and praise our own families, our children, our husbands, boyfriends, whatever. We have to praise each other, and they in turn must do the same for us as women. And we are all strong women. We are strong people, strong men, strong women made strong children, and generations to follow. So take a look at these three books, and I have three others because I have six, like I said, in publication that I want you to look at. But today, I wanted to feature these first three, and then we'll get into the next three. So you can go out and buy them, okay? Because I need your support. And if there's any topic that you would like to hear me discuss about writing, or just the whole process of getting involved in writing, if there's something that you want to know that I haven't touched on, please be sure to give me a call, or and or send me an email, which is the best way to get in touch with me, at Fourth Ward Publications at gmail.com. That's fourth, the number four, TH, Ward, WARD, Publications at gmail.com. And I want you to enjoy the books that I've summarized today, and hopefully you'll be fascinated enough to pick them up and read them. You'll love them. You'll absolutely love them. They're very special to me. And there again, writing Bottom was a wonderful experience, and especially the research, which is the best part, I think, of writing, because you learn so much. And then to create characters who fulfill a certain story that you want to tell, it's a very intense process, and really, we're blessed to have that. So great, have a wonderful weekend, and be sure that you tell everyone about us, and also make sure that you treat your families with dignity and strength and pride. Let them know that you love them. Let them know how special they are. We are wonderful people. We are God's first creations. And we have to make sure that we know that our families know that, and that our families understand the responsibility that our Creator gave us as being those first people on the face of the earth. We are the first God's creatures, and what He wanted for us. So have a great week, and enjoy each other, and have peace and love wherever you go. Okay. And thank you so much for joining me today. Not well, joining me. And hopefully you can do something today that will lift up others and help them to become better and more active in our lives, because we must all work together no matter what. We must all work together in order for all of us to get there. Everyone, each one teach one. That was the goal. Okay. God bless you, and have a great week. Love you.